We are on the record this morning for our first regular review in this case regarding Ms. Todd and her children. We have given the parties some time to speak at their request, and at this time we're ready to get started with proofs. Appearances, please.
Lee Heiss, lawyer guardian ad litem.
Ms. Sasha Thomas, counsel for the department.
Brenda Burgess, foster care worker.
Maris Hennigan, attorney for Jamie Todd.
Jamie Todd, mother.
Thank you. Ms. Heiss.
Oh, thank you, Your Honor. I was able to visit with both children face to face. I observed a parenting time between the little guy and his mother. Mother has shown us through these extensive reports that she is able to provide what is needed during visit times. We also have an evaluation of her understanding of parenting. All of these are very positive developments. Not that it's new, but that we have it from professionals. However, we still continue that Caleb has continued to fixate on his memories of a gun and memories of the Christmas presents being tossed out the back door during a rage. Mom tossed Christmas 1 year ago. So he's continuing to fear for his life, his dad's life. Those are things that he's in weekly counseling for, and that we're hoping for progress. The nature of the trauma, and in addition to Kate, the oldest child, I tried to not say the name, the oldest child's neurodivergence, both combined to show us that he's not ready yet for visits. We have professional reports from his counselor. So there are lots of strengths in this case, and as present today as it was when the oldest child saw a gun and when he observed his mother's rage, that is still present. This is why I say that. There aren't any counseling records. There aren't any counseling records. I can't tell if anybody's working on the problems. This case is about mental health. It's parenting skills are something that got confused in the mental health. She had some outbursts, but I don't know that it was parenting skills that were the problem and the stress. It was her mental health, and we haven't started. So we've only had disposition in October-ish. Even though the case has been open and the kids have been in care, we just don't have progress. And I want to be very clear in my comments, that it's mental health that we need to see progressing. We've talked on the record before about social media is a free speech platform. You can make up anything you want. I can tell you, create a page of thinking about that I'm in Russia and I have this beautiful garden. Look at my beautiful garden. My choice if I want to do that.
Just a really quick interruption to show you some of what she's about to talk about.
Show you all my flowers. I can, Miss Todd continues to put things on the internet after we've told her we're watching. She knows I'm watching. The bizarre things that are on there, the intense things. I am all for free speech. I love creativity. I love expression. I love alter egos, but this stuff is intense. And she has been charged with stalking in this review period. She has addressed her domestic violence charge so that we have a capable parent. So the youngest little baby, Precious, and developmental, delayed in his speech, but just in so many ways, a wonderful, wonderful son of this mother. She has parenting skills, and he's being robbed of a good mom because we don't have mental health addressed. I just want to be clear. And so I'm going to rest on those comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Thomas?
Thank you, Honor. Ms. Burgess, can be sworn in, please?
Sure, will you stand?
Swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. Morning, Ms. Burgess.
Morning.
As a preliminary matter, I just want to confirm on the record, Your Honor, that the court and council have received the court report with the 10 attachments that are listed in the court report attachment sheet.
Yes.
Yes, I have those. I also have some leftover, it looks like some leftover things from last time, including the trauma assessments. There were some things I think that were, I think they're labeled as exhibits potentially for purposes of trial, but were never actually entered into our record. So, yeah, okay. So it looks like it's just the trauma assessment for the oldest child. So if that's something you would like to address today, then great. And if not, then we can, I'm happy to do that at a future hearing.
Your Honor, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that it was addressed during like pretrial reviews in May or June. But if the court would like to receive that today, I know that it has been circulated and received by council.
I have, do you have a CTAC report that looks like it came in during a 4/26/22 pretrial review, but that was all pre-adjudication. So. There's a number of things that looks like it came in pre-adjudication. Ms. Hennigan, have you had a chance to look at those things?
I have had a chance to review all the documents that are speaking of, Your Honor. I think there was a couple hundred pages worth of documents that came in over the last week or so. So I have had a chance to.
So do you have any concerns about the court reviewing the documents that were entered in as pretrial reviews, meaning prior to her adjudication, in addition to the documents that are coming in today?
Yes, I would have a concern about those that were prior to the adjudication. And I would say that my client has not had opportunity to review all of those since the time that they came in. So I would like her to look through all of that before I would take a stance on whether or not it was we wanted the court to review those.
So those, she did have a chance to look at those. Those were prior to our pretrial reviews. And they were circulated to her and her counsel at that time. But obviously they were pre-adjudication. So I will leave that to you and Ms. Thomas to consider between now and our next review hearing as far as how you would like me to utilize, if you would like me to look at those, or if you want to re-enter anything. But that is something I wanted to bring to everyone's attention, because there were some things that came in through those reviews that concerned specifically the older child and his needs. And I think that there's been sort of an assumption that those are available to me and for purposes of our reviews, which obviously may not be the case. So with that in mind, I'll be happy to receive, unless there's any objections, I'll be happy to receive the documents that came in today, and I'll leave you to it for anything prior to our adjudication.
Ms. Burgess, you have been the foster care worker during this review period, correct?
Correct.
And during this review period, how would you describe or summarize Ms. Todd's level of compliance with and benefit from her case service plan?
Ms. Todd has been participating in her future treatment at ACPC. She has had counseling through Catherine Cobb Domestic Violence. shelter. She has participated in parenting time. She has attended Jacob's medical and dental appointments and speech appointments. She did obtain mental health counseling through ACPC as well. However, when I contacted the therapist indicated that Ms. Todd had participated in November, but had not participated since November. He stated that he would contact her for the appointment and she didn't answer. And when I let Ms. Todd know that that's what I had learned, she said that there were never any calls from the therapist and that she was addressing that with ACPC. And I don't have any further information on that. So, I mean, we changed visitation a little bit where Ms. Todd didn't want to any longer go to Brene Moore's office for parenting time due to her being, frustrated and upset with not going over her reports from her parenting time anymore. And so instead of doing one visit per week, Linda Edwards picked up another visit per week, and she was referred to foster care supportive visitation, and that involves education, parent education, and also a visit with Jacob. So she has been participating in those things. There again, the concern still is the aggravated assault in Colorado. That charge is still pending, and then the aggravated stalking in Lenawee County is still pending. She is on probation for domestic violence, and apparently she's cooperative with that, with her probation. I think that's it. Thank you.
And as it stands today, what would be the risk of harm to the children if they were to be returned to Ms. Todd's care and custody?
So per Brene Moore's report regarding Caleb, Caleb is still very fearful of his mom, hasn't had any parenting time, is, has a trauma response every time he thinks he sees his mom. Doesn't feel safe in the therapist's office if he thinks he sees his mom. So, that would be risk of harm and also, again, just the mental health concerns regarding both children, and then the ongoing criminal domestic violence.
When you discuss mental health concerns, are there any behaviors in particular that concern you or that would be or would signify that those are a risk of harm to the children?
I mean, Jamie has had she tells me she's had extensive trauma herself, and she believes that she is, a victim, and she has used social media, and there are concerning, statements on social media, threatening statements and things that are concerning.
Thank you. And at this time, the children are not placed together, correct?
Correct.
And are they receiving any monthly sibling visits?
They have frequent sibling visits, yes.
Those are coordinated by the foster parent and the non-responding father.
Correct.
Is there anything that you would like to point out to the court for purposes of review?
No.
In parenting time, are you making any recommendation to to change that as it relates to Jacob or the younger child?
No.
And as it relates to the older child, I know that you've testified a bit about that, but has Ms. Moore indicated to you or indicated what she would need to see from the child in order to recommend that parent time could happen?
She feels that even perceived parenting time with mom, you know, gives Caleb, you know, Caleb reacts to that. I know during the report period, as her report states that she suggested, you know, communication like Jamie's provided a birthday card. I think there was a Halloween card. And a couple of other things, and as far, and it also like sharing a video. Jamie had a video that she requested that be played, and so those types of things is what the therapist has recommended.
And the report indicates that he's still pretty reactive to even those things, correct?
Correct.
Is there, to the best of your knowledge, is there any coordination between Ms. Todd's therapist and Ms. Moore about the child's needs and how those can be worked into Ms. Todd's therapy? Do you know if there's any collaboration or communication there?
We did have one meeting with both therapists. But I don't believe, I don't know if there's been any communication between them. Right after the last hearing, I did try to facilitate Jamie in meeting with Renee Moore. I met with them at their office, at her office. We had scheduled a time being like 15 minutes prior to their Thursday visit. And so that occurred during this report period. I know that's not regarding the question about therapists communicating. I don't believe there's any ongoing communication there.
Okay, thank you. And what would you need to see, or what would, are you aware of what Ms. Todd would need to demonstrate in order to move towards unsupervised parenting time as it relates to Jacob?
More participation in the mental health therapy. And then she is scheduled for a psychological this month. I think it's on the 23rd. And so any recommendations from that?
Thank you. I have no further questions, Your Honor, and would move to admit the court report with the several attachments.
Any objections?
No objections, Your Honor.
No objection.
Thank you. They are received. Questions, Ms. Hennigan?
Yes, just a few. We heard your input with regard to Ms. Todd and work on the mental health aspects. With regard to the case service plan that the agency's been working with her on and the requirements that have been given to her, are there any other requirements that you feel that she's not met at this time? How do you feel her progress is going on those requirements?
I think services are in place, and there aren't any other recommendations.
Would it help refresh your memory if I were to let you see a copy of the case service plan?
I have it.
Okay, so then looking on page 1 of that plan, item number 2, where it says Jamie Todd will. Could you just skim through those items A through N and tell me if there's any others, anything in there that Ms. Todd is not working on or doing well with at this time from your interactions with her?
So as far as individual treatment with a licensed therapist to address domestic violence and the effects on children, trauma and the effects on children, she has been in therapy with Catherine Cobb and she's a licensed therapist. And I should point out that they work, that their work is victim focused. So that's the treatment that she's received there. Parenting program. She's currently in a parenting program, the foster care supportive visitation. She did have some parent education through Renee Moore. And also Jamie has reported to me that I haven't seen any records, but she's reported having parenting through CPS. We have also gone through, Jamie was provided the trauma assessment where there were some recommendations on that trauma assessment. Jamie has maintained clean housing, refrain from criminal activity, she would not be in compliance with that, and not reside with anyone who has a SC history or current criminal activity. I have been informed that Jamie still does have contact with somebody that has a criminal history, that she's married to. So this was came up in social media. She's in compliant with. Jamie notified me when she her employment status changed. She is working in all court hearings. She's attended Jacob's mental health and educational appointments. I don't have any information on her budget. She's attended visitation. Her psychological is scheduled. She's participating in psychiatric services, with the exception of the mental health therapy that she hasn't attended. I mean, the personal protection order, I think that's why she was charged with the stalking, was because that was a violation. I did attempt to set up that weekly conference with Jamie and Renee, and I believe that occurred through mid-December. I don't know that Jamie's had any contact with Renee since that time.
That's very helpful. You said that Renee is recommended with regard to the oldest child that Ms. Todd send cards or videos or things like that, but to your knowledge, that hasn't been working out well just yet.
She has done those things, but it's not worked out well for Caleb, yes.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Questions, Ms. Ice?
No, thank you.
Okay, any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you for your testimony. You may return to your seat. Any other witnesses you'd like us to hear from?
No, Your Honor.
Witnesses today?
Not today, Your Honor.
Ms. Heiss?
No witnesses, thank you.
All right, closing comments then?
Thank you, Your Honor. During this review period, Ms. Todd has made progress as she's continued to comply with a substantial part of her peace service plan. There are some outstanding issues that the department is aware of, and there are concerns about the children's safety should there be unsupervised parenting time. So at this point, we would just request status quo for the next review period to permit the psychological evaluation to be completed, get those recommendations back, and make any necessary referrals at that time. Thank you.
So could you summarize those specific things for me?
The risks to the children. As Ms. Burgess had testified and based on the LGAL's report, the concern about mental health is part of what brought this case into this court's jurisdiction. And again, noting that mom is complying with her psychiatric appointments, receiving therapy. Unfortunately, the reports that we're receiving from Ms. Prez are absent of what the goals are, what the progress is, and how we know that they're making progress towards those goals. And given the reactivity that Caleb is experiencing, that risk of harm still remains present for him. And as relates to Jacob, the parenting reports are wholly positive as relates to mom. The concern would be that if we take those away based on the behaviors that are also indicated in the report and the LGL's prior testimony about mom's messy erratic behavior using social media to be expressive, but what the contents and the demeanor of that would be, would the child be exposed to those if parenting time was not supervised? So we would, that's what the risk of harm would be to the child, the youngest child at this time.
I don't recall seeing anything in the exhibits about the social media. Was that something that maybe I missed?
Your Honor, based on the overwhelming amount of social media posts that we were receiving in my office to be admitted into court, we, as the attorney, I decided that it was unnecessary based on the fact that Ms. Heisen also put on the record that she would be monitoring that. I believe that it is still monitored and that it is still known by the department, but we are not bringing it into court and into the record to necessarily hold that against Ms. Todd, because that's not the goal here. We just wanted to make sure that the children are safe. And so that we rely on Ms. Heise's report for that and the indications made by the worker.
All right. Does she have housing?
Yes.
Okay. And was there an issue with someone that she was residing with?
The concern would be the issue. There's an indication that she is married to another person outside of this state's jurisdiction, and that individual has a substantial criminal history. And there's concerns about her communication or continued involvement with that individual.
And we have potentially a new stalking charge, but no supportive documents or police reports at this time.
I didn't know, we did not receive those.
Comments?
Thank you, Your Honor. As has been indicated here today, Ms. Todd's been working very hard on her case management plan and accomplished the majority of the things, or is continuing to work on the majority of the things here that that the department has asked her to do. The remaining items that have not been completed yet, I believe that most of those are scheduled, such as her psychological exam that you heard Ms. Thomas speak about as well. She has just demonstrated that she has very strong parenting skills through all the evaluations that have been done since this matter has begun. She desires to work towards having more liberal visitation with her children, but will abide by the rules of the court in order to, demonstrate to the agency and the court that she will provide safety for her children. While I understand that the agency is asking to just maintain status quo, I would ask that the court require that the parties work towards some type of unsupervised visitation with Jacob. And also that if Renee Moore is the individual assigned to work with Caleb, that she also be required to communicate with Ms. Todd's counselor as well, so that they can be working together towards some type of reunification efforts. Thank you.
Have you talked with the caseworker to see if that's already happening?
Ms. Todd's counselor is present in the courtroom today, and I'm sorry. She left.
Yeah.
Sorry. She's not been able to successfully communicate with Ms. Moore for the past few weeks at least. She's been trying to reach out, especially after the breakdown in communication between Ms. Todd and Renee Moore. They felt that maybe that would be a better way to keep working forward, but we've not been able to accomplish that yet.
All right. Would you be willing to try to work through your caseworker in order to facilitate, for example, a records exchange between the two therapists, even if you can't have a direct conversation between the two of them?
Absolutely. We can do that.
Is your client married to another person out of the state of Michigan somewhere?
Shin? I'll let her answer you, Your Honor.
It's a fraudulent marriage thing. I've already spoken to a lawyer for 3 hours yesterday. That is not my signature. And I'm going through the legal process to prove that there was fraud involved in that. It was signed, that paper was not my signature. And that notary has no, in his ledger, John Hershey has no ledger documentation he's signing that at all. He was spoken to. So I'm gonna say no. I needed the thing from them to be able to move forward legally and making sure that this is absolutely taken care of. I have a boyfriend, he's not living with me, I'm not married.
Well, you are married still.
Correct.
She is married still to the oldest child's father, who's just going through a divorce.
Yes.
But she's not married to the other individual.
Comments?
Your Honor, may I have the mother sworn and ask if that she has any change in that statement after she's sworn? Yes, go ahead, thank you.
Remain seated, but raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Go ahead with any questions. Sorry, I
Thank
should have
you.
offered that.
Ms. Todd, the statement that you just made in response to the question about whether you're married to someone outside the state of Michigan, is there anything about that answer you would change now that you're under oath?
Be more specific. No, this is my knowledge too. I was on a phone call with my lawyer for 3 hours yesterday, trying to make sure what was going on, my lawyer in Colorado, so.
Okay, so you're not married to anyone outside the state of Michigan?
Fraudulently, am I fraudulently currently, is there a document that you guys have that I believe is a fraudulent document? Yes, I do believe you guys have that. I do not believe I am the one to assign that. I do not believe I am the one who entered into a marriage with him.
Okay.
He is very upset about that individual, but I have no he's not allowed to have contact with me due to his parole.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have any questions, Ms. Thomas?
I do not, Your Honor, thank you.
Any other follow-up questions?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Okay. It was a bit out of order, so if there's anybody else that needs some additional proofs as a result of that or additional comments, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll go to Ms. Heiss.
Thank you, Your Honor. The social media material, Ms. Burgess testified as disturbing and concerning. It's a real judgment call about bringing that in front of you when what we're trying to say is that this person needs help. We're not trying to show you more evidence of her current state. I don't think it would be fair or kind. It is, I told you earlier, intense. The material is intense, but it doesn't seem fair when we believe that this isn't bad behavior. We believe that this isn't a reflection of who this person can and will be when she has the appropriate support. I would ask you, deep in the court report, there is an assessment on the oldest child regarding getting an accurate diagnosis. And in this report from Spectrum Health, I believe they're asking for a DNA sample from mother so that we can't quite determine what all the maybe fetal alcohol syndrome is suspected, and mother is telling us that that is not going to be found to be a valid diagnosis, so that if we were able to have mother's blood chromosomal microarray evaluation, we could help this older child with more specific diagnosis so that the treatment can be more accurate. On page 1 of 3 of the Spectrum Health report dated January 9th of 2023. I would ask you to order or at least to have the mother consider submitting to that test for the benefit of the child. Thank you.
Will you be asking her to submit to that?
Yes.
Ms. Hennigan, would you like to address any concerns you may have about that? I know it's sort of popping up.
Yes, my client has addressed those concerns with me, Your Honor, that we felt it'd be a very difficult for an accurate assessment and report to be presented without Ms. Todd's participation. And so with regard to that, we would like to see her given an opportunity to participate in that in an amended report submitted at that time, to which then we feel fair consideration can be given for all parties.
Was your client notified of the evaluation?
She was notified after the evaluations.
where he was having one done, and then I also have submitted for records of all my maternal, like, obstetrician appointments and everything. I just received those in the e-file from Swedish Hospital in Colorado. It's over 600 pages of all my, to show that it's not in there too. So I'm willing to participate in this. I've always wanted to, but I was not aware that I was being asked to submit anything since the.
Ms. Burgess, this is an assessment that the child undertook, is that right?
Yes, and it was scheduled by his father. And I did talk with Jamie and told Jamie that she could, you know, forward any information to me, and I would see that the, you know, the hospital received it.
Is it something that do you know whether or not they would want the records that Ms. Todd has just talked to us about? If that could be.
I was informed that they sought out those records themselves. But I don't know, I only have the report.
All right, could you maybe look into that between now and when we come back as far as what they actually had? And if Ms. Todd would have any part or anything to contribute to such an analysis? Anything else?
No, thank you.
The court finds all interested parties were given notice for purposes of today's review hearing. I first want to take a moment to say I do appreciate all of the documentation I received. Sometimes that can be a double-edged sword. For example, I love that you checked in with the probation officer, but I noticed also that they accomplished an aggression assessment, which is very much piques my interest, especially considering the criminology or the criminal charges that are pending and have just been recently settled. And so if you can convince our probation officer to hand over a copy of that, I think that could be very useful, especially in circulating that to therapeutic service providers as well. But certainly the reports and all of the interventions and monitoring that Ms. Burgess has very thoroughly testified to today constitutes reasonable efforts towards the goal of reunification. So thank you, and thank you for your very diligent efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you also to Ms. Heiss for her efforts, and you have certainly satisfied your obligations as guardian ad litem.
Thank you.
The counselor does continue to find that there is a risk of harm associated with allowing visitation between the mother and the oldest child here. That has to do, I think, in large part with a few of the, or maybe a lot of, we don't really know, the incidents that occurred when Ms. Todd was in the presence of the child. But that's also been, I think, magnified by many of the diagnoses that we have here today. So in other words, this child may have undergone some trauma, but because of the conditions of the child, those traumas have been much more impactful for him. For example, he's of course has an IED for emotional impairment that continues to be monitored and serviced through the schools. He has a speech and sound disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, ADHD, a cognitive disorder, developmental coordination disorder, and mild features that are associated with fetal alcohol spectrum diagnosis. That, as I read it, has much to do with the symptoms that were found to be present in the child. And although wouldn't be, and this is my reading of these, wouldn't be 100% associated with fetal alcohol syndrome, they would advise that many of the treatments employed in therapeutic interventions for a child with that diagnosis could be used for this child. So I think at the end of the day, it almost doesn't matter. It's too late. The cat's out of the bag, the horse is out of the barn, if you will. This child is going to need some of those interventions in order to help some of the other therapeutic services be effective. So what I would like to see from you, Ms. Todd, is your continued dedication to understanding those services, diagnoses, and participation in services, so that in the event that there is a time when this child is emotionally able to see you, that you know how to handle it. As it relates to the youngest child, in the request for unsupervised visitation, there are some very interesting things happening in this case. And it makes me wonder, I'm very curious about what the psychological evaluation is going to produce, because in the course of setting up the contract for the services through, I think this is Orchards, maybe, Children's Services. But the foster care supportive visitation and home parent education and initial assessment specifically, part of that process included an AAPI, an adult adolescent parenting inventory. And the results of that are frankly astounding. They indicate an above average understanding of age appropriate expectations, child development, and positive parental self-concept. At worst, an average understanding of empathy, nurturing skills, and positive coping mechanisms. Above average understanding of alternatives to corporal punishment. Above average understanding of alternative of appropriate family roles, self-esteem, self-awareness, and support system. And above average understanding of children's independence, power, problem solving, and communication skills. On another evaluation called the Nurturing Skills Competency Scale, and this is just in January, I believe. This was done, 12/16 of 22, and maybe just following that. The score for these test results in the NSCS2 indicate an above average quality of life. Jamie had an average childhood that he experiences memories of, according to this, or she. The child experiences an average relationship with his father, the above average home environment with the family, above average understanding of the philosophy, knowledge, and skills of nurturing parenting, and an above average understanding of nurturing parenting and concepts. That is clearly not the case when you have a child who's been diagnosed with PTSD, ADHD, cognitive disorders, developmental coordination disorder, and mild features associated with fetal alcohol spectrum syndrome. So, furthermore, I've been looking at the visitation summary sheets. Many of the observations, of course, by Ms. Edwards are very important. And it's also the reason that the observations by therapeutic interventions for Jamie Todd individually are very important. This is sort of where the rubber meets the road. There are some concerns happening during parenting time that indicate that the results of the AAPI and the NCSC, I believe is the initials for the other test, are not entirely accurate. Which, for example, as recently as medium December, she began arguing with the worker in front of Jacob. The child is subject to not only him, but another family's children as well to verbal abuse. This creates hypervigilance in the child and creates further mental and emotional distress. She sat on the floor with the child and started playing the music player at one point. The child hid it out of her hand and she replied, "Well, that's one way to stop it." Instead of correcting Jacob's behavior and teaching him that he can't throw things, she made it into a joke, is the comment. There are some other indications here that she's not responsibly handling parenting time as far as when the child is upset, managing the room as she goes, waiting until the end of it, which obviously creates a concern of her managing cleanup at the same time she's supposed to be monitoring the child. There's an observation she cannot handle criticism, becomes combative and argumentative when she views concerns that are raised. So those are just a few examples. There are, as Ms. Hennigan pointed out, there are a significant number of pages. I think you said 600, but it might be 4.
I think she has 600, but we have close to 4.
Yeah. So there's a lot of information here, which we absolutely need in this case, frankly. So as I'm just going to remind you, Ms. Todd, that just in the same way that Ms. Heiss has advised you that she's watching your social media, we are watching your interactions with your children. Your parenting skills are very important to making sure that you are able to create a safe environment for your child. The fact that we have new criminal charges for stalking is not a good indication that your individual therapy is beneficial to you at this time. So I agree with Ms. Heiss that we need more information to that extent. Also, we'll be continuing to watch the observation logs and looking to Ms. Moore and Ms. Edwards to diligently monitor those and report back to the court, because at this time I cannot find that there has been an alleviation of the risk to the child that's been alleviated to the extent that unsupervised period of time is appropriate. We need to understand more thoroughly who the players are in your life, how you are interacting with them, and why that continues to create a situation where you are accumulating additional criminal charges. So for those reasons, the parenting time will remain supervised in the next court report period. I do find that there is progress being made in many of these areas, and I appreciate your cooperation with assessments and your engagement and dedication to including time into your schedule for services, and I encourage you to continue to do that. And I'm happy to look at all those records again at our next court review. In the meantime, both children will remain in their current placements. Those are the safest and least restrictive considering the circumstances. And we will have our next review, which will also be a permanency planning hearing, because at that time will be more than 6 months in, on April 11th at 9 o'clock in the morning. Unless there's any questions, that's all for today. We'll see you April 11th at 9 o'clock in the morning. I'll have this.